Hi, my name is Kayana Culver. I'm 12 years old and I am homeschooled. This is my second year in the BE Roadrunners 4-H Horse Club. Have you ever been in a horse pasture and noticed the horse eating something other than grass? Today I'm going to tell you about the most common toxic plants for a horse in Skagit County. The most common toxic plants in Skagit County are Ranunculus repens, Synechio jacobai, Equisetum, and Conia maculatum. I would like to start out first by talking about Ranunculus repens, from here on out known as creeping buttercup. The creeping buttercup has a long stem and a bright yellow flower at the end of it. It normally grows in clusters of other creeping buttercups and can grow to 12 inches tall. It is very common throughout Skagit County and other parts of the U.S. When a significant quantity is ingested, it can cause chronic inflammation, salivation, blisters or ulcers of the mouth and digestive system, colic or gastric issues, diarrhea which can sometimes be bloody, and convulsions. If your horse shows any of these signs, you want to call the vet immediately, remove your horse from the pasture, and stop feeding any suspected hay. Even though there is no known antidote, your vet will have several treatments available that are helpful. The next toxic plant I would like to talk about is Synechio jacobai, from here on out known as tansy ragwort. Tansy ragwort has a long leafy stem with a small yellow flower at the end of it. This plant can grow up from 8 to 32 inches tall. This plant may not be suspected for making your horse sick because it can take months for symptoms to show up. Once symptoms show up, your horse's health will decline rapidly, which may include chronic liver damage and disease, which includes cirrhosis, lethargy, ascites, which is fluid buildup in abdomen, loss of vision, lack of appetite, increased temperature, jaundice, secondary photosensation, diarrhea, which can sometimes be bloody, unusual odor, head pressing, weakness and stumbling, sometimes called sleep staggers or walking disease, coma, and death. Once your horse shows any of these signs, you want to call the vet immediately and remove your horse from the pasture and stop feeding any suspected hay. Unfortunately, the prognosis is generally not good after symptoms are observed. Treatment will depend on type and severity of the symptoms. The third toxic plant I would like to talk about is Equisetum, also known as horsetail, scouring rush, mare's tail, field horsetail, and snakegrass. Horsetail has a long, hollow green stem that can grow up to 2 to 6 feet tall. It also has long needles that grow out from the stem. This plant is very common throughout Washington. In fact, the Pacific Northwest is home to half of all known species of Equisetum. After your horse eats this plant, his or her appetite may remain normal until toxicity is severe, but you may observe unexplained weight loss. Other symptoms include weakness, difficulty moving, rigid muscles, trembling, rapid weak pulse, constipation, seizure, and coma. If you see any of these signs or know that your horse has eaten this plant, call your vet immediately, remove your horse from the pasture, and stop feeding any suspected hay. The good news is that less advanced cases may recover when horsetail is removed from the diet. High doses of thiamine and supportive treatments may be needed for more serious cases. The last toxic plant I want to talk about is Conia maculatum, also known as the poison hemlock. According to my equine vet, the poison hemlock is the most toxic plant in Skagit County to a horse. Poison hemlock has a very tall stem that can grow from 2 to 10 feet tall. At the top of the stem is a cluster of little white flowers. This plant grows all over Washington, especially common around dikes and water. Sadly, the first sign of a horse eating this may be death. Other early signs may include salivation, trembling and incoordination, rapid pulse, coma, and paralysis. If your horse shows any of these signs, call the vet immediately. Because this plant is so toxic, there are not many treatment options available. Like the previous plant's remedies, remove your horse from the pasture and stop feeding any suspected hay. Treatment options will depend on your horse's symptoms and level of toxicity. The two most likely options your vet will use are activated charcoal and saline purgatives, which can help in less severe cases. Horses that survive for 8 to 10 hours after the first observed symptoms are more likely to survive. I have now spoken about the 4 most common toxic plants in Skagit County, which include creeping buttercup, tansy ragwort, horsetail, and poison hemlock. As you can now see, it is important to know what is growing in your horse's pasture. If you notice any of these plants I have spoken about today, it is important that you take your horse out of the pasture immediately. Likewise, if your horse shows any of these symptoms I have discussed, it is crucial you call your vet immediately and remove any suspected hay, because a healthy horse is a happy horse. My sources have been Protect Your Horses and Livestock from Toxic Plants, produced by the Washington State Noxious Weed Control Board. My other source is my equine vet, Julie Isle. This concludes my presentation.